So I'm going to hand you over to Surrey Heath Borough Council. I'd really like to welcome David Eggington. He's from Surrey Heath. David was introduced to FME at university and currently supports a significant number of production FME processes that help knit together some of the systems at Surrey Heath. He was actually kind enough to present a different topic for us last week. So if you want to help improve your personal cybersecurity, you can check out the recording of that session when we have uploaded it with today's sessions as well. But today we're going to hear about how FME helps Surrey Heath to be more transparent when it comes to spending on services. So thanks for sharing it, David, and over to you.
Yeah, not a problem. Can you hear me okay? And can you see everything?
Loud and clear, and we've got your slides perfectly.
Perfect, perfect. I've plugged in my laptop this week as well, so we won't have a repeat of last week where it almost turned off right at the end.
Awesome.
Yeah, good start, good start. Yeah, so this isn't quite as pertinent as the COVID dashboard, but this is David was over the end of last year delivering some training, and he quite liked the look of this workspace and kind of the workflow that we have going here. So I'm just going to run through a few workspaces which are very short and not very complicated, but they kind of build quite a nice, elegant process that we legally have to do, but also is much nicer than what we used to do. So I'll get started. It's entirely non-geographic, and it's all about finance. So basically, in 2015, there was a transparency code published for local governments, and this was all about making local authorities more comparable and more transparent with members of the public. So they wouldn't have to raise FOIs for certain things, which is good for us because that saves us time. And it's also good for members of the public because they wouldn't have to go through the whole FOI rigmarole, and they could hopefully easily access information. So yeah, the workspaces I'm kind of going to run through today, which shouldn't take too long, cover the publishing of details for individual expenditure, which costs about £500 or more per item. And kind of like this very fun legal document is nicely summarized in this table in the appendix of the document. And yeah, it's just about regularly publishing data about expenditure. So anybody can hop on a council's website and see what's happening to their council tax, basically. And it should make everything more open, comparable, nice and transparent. These are a few outputs. So this came in 2015, this bit of legislation, and these are a few examples of some of our outputs for 2014, so the year before it came in. So we've actually been published as an organisation, as a borough council. We've been publishing this data since 2011. But as you can see from these examples from 2014, when it was manually produced, you get some variations, such as these titles are all completely different. You have some random personal additions sometimes, like somebody's put in here a nice header for whatever reason. You get fields moving around, so it's not a standardized format the data has been presented in. So 1 month isn't comparable to the last, and kind of on a continuation of that, the attributes formats are different. So you can see there are different date formats, and you can see there that all three files have different numeric formats with regard to the thousand separators and decimal places. So all in all, it's good that we're publishing this data, but it's not particularly helpful if you're going to be comparing it even to ourselves, let alone other boroughs. If you are even going to compare August to September, the files look very different depending on whoever made it that month, for whatever reason. So this is basically the old workflow. It was entirely manual. It required someone in IT to execute a nice SQL query, and extract the data from the finance databases. It then required finance to redact it in Excel, because they like using Excel. And then marketing, someone in marketing would upload it to our website, and that would have a download link for members of the public to download. So it was a very manual process. It required at least 3 people to interact with the data in some capacity. And obviously there's lots of problems with that. Someone might be on holiday, etc., etc. So it was always going to be unreliable and give you varying outputs. So with FME, the process is still largely the same, but FME pulls that out of the database on a nice regular timetable, passes that onto finance, and then finance uploads that via FME to AWS, and then we have a nice widget on one of our web pages where members of the public can get the data. So although it's largely the same workflow, there's less people having to get involved. The only manual interaction is the redaction that finance need to do in the middle. So this is the first workspace in the process. This is a FME desktop workspace, 2019. It was first made in 2015, so it's been kept up to date. It's not particularly complicated, the workspace. And this just runs monthly at the end of every month, and is set up to run by a Windows schedule task, and that will output all of the expenditure data, expenses over £500 for the prior month. As I say, it's not massively complicated. It extracts the data, formats the data, such as getting the date format in the correct order or the desired format, numeric formats, and replaces special characters. It writes that out as a CSV just to an archive, just in case anything later on goes wrong down the line. And then that data is then distributed via email to finance for redaction. And also we in ICT get a Slack notification. Most of our FME workspaces have Slack integrated in some capacity, just so, you know, if you're lying in bed in the morning, you can flick on Slack and see what's gone wrong overnight and fix that. Hopefully nothing's gone wrong, but it always does. Yep, so this is an example. Just at the top is an example of the email that finance will get sent. And down below is an example of a Slack notification that we'd get in Slack, just to let us know that everything went okay. Following this, so following that email, finance will have their file to redact. Once they've done their redaction, typically in Excel, they like to use Excel to do their redaction. After they've done that, they will go to a static website hosted on Amazon's S3, as you can see here. Obviously, this was built in 2015, and we could update it to now use an FME server app, but in 2015 they didn't exist. So this is just a static web page, and whoever's done the redaction in finance can hop on here, choose their file, upload their file, and then once it's uploaded, they get that little message at the bottom just to kind of reassure them that something's happened. And in the background, this will kick off an FME cloud automation. And this automation is just a directory watcher, really, and that polls our resources area on FME cloud, and that just waits for our redacted file to appear. And once it picks up that file, it kicks off a very simplistic workspace, which receives the file, again, does some formatting to remove some characters that Excel likes to put in, and again, does some date formatting, and just make sure everything's ready for that data then to be written into Amazon's RDS. And yet again, the workspace the automation after it's completed will send us a notification via Slack saying whether it's run successfully or not. But provided it all has, that all the data then for that month will be sat up in Amazon's RDS, ready for members of the public to hop onto our website and get whatever they're interested in, which leads to the third and final workspace. This workspace is embedded as a widget at the URL on screen. It's very simple. It's not a particularly complicated workspace in that it gets the data for Amazon RDS, gets the parameters that users will have put in. So the users can put in there the dates they're interested in. So instead of having to download, 3 or 4 CSVs if you're interested in 3 or 4 months of data, or if you're interested in 1 month of data, you can use this widget just to put in the dates you're interested in and get the data just for that period. So yeah, receives the user parameters, formats the data to put it in date order, and then that will just take out, using the user parameters, just the data select they're interested in, and delivers that as a CSV download for the user within their browser window. And yeah, that's it really. So by using a combination of desktop and cloud, it removes a lot of the manual interaction that we otherwise would have had to have done. It helps us meet everything we need to meet, and also lets us complete a couple of recommendations, such as publishing data quickly and not quarterly. There's obviously things we could do to improve the process, like transactions that exceed 250 instead of 500, but that's more of a decision for finance. But with regard to FME, we could easily add in something along the lines of publishing total amounts spent or classifying expenditure. But yeah, FME really helps to produce a nice standardized output very quickly. You don't have to wait ages and different team members to do this, that, and the other. And from the user's perspective, it's much nicer being able to download almost 6 years of data now by selecting 2 dates and receiving 1 CSV, rather than having to download any number of CSVs, which are called any number of different things, all formatted differently. Yeah, it's just a lot nicer for everyone involved. But yeah, any questions, I'd be very happy to answer any questions. Every authority has to do this, so I'm not sure what other authorities do. But yeah, that's how we kind of solved the problem.
Thank you, David. There are a couple of questions. One of them, I mean, you mentioned at the end about not having to do quarterly. Somebody's asked what is the frequency of that you publish?
Yeah, so ours is monthly. So yeah, we, according to the legislation, we have to do it at least quarterly. However, I think it's preferential if you could do it. I think the legislation says live, but it would be almost impossible. It would be a lot of work for finance to be constantly redacting 1 bit at a time. So we do it on a monthly basis.
Okay. And do you put any sort of notification out publicly that you've got new data available?
No. It's kind of the process. FME is fantastic, obviously, in that the whole process is kicked off by a scheduled desktop FME workbench. So that goes same time every month, regardless of what's happening. And likewise, the server automation we have set up on FME Cloud, which you guys host for us, is fantastic because it polls the folder waiting for that redacted file every minute. It's the middle bit where someone actually has to go in and start redacting the file and takes the longest. So it's quite hard to tell when a file will be uploaded, but usually it's within the first week of the month, every month, that someone in finance will have had time to go in and redact the file.
Okay, it's interesting. We've had a couple of people actually mention that you could perhaps use some sort of machine learning to start, pre-redacting the data.
Yeah,
might be interesting.
We did, yeah. We haven't tried that with FME, but we did have a bit of an exploration with that. But some things they redact down in finance are interesting, to say the least.
Things that the machine wouldn't think about. Yeah, I mean, I guess there's a pass of it, but it does sound like there needs to be a manual element for sure.
Certainly. Yeah, you definitely don't want a name sneaking through.
No, absolutely. One other one. Did you guys adopt Slack for a particular reason? Is that?
Slack integrates really nicely with its webhooks. On Slack, you can, I don't know if anyone's familiar with it, but you can set up channels, and they're very easy to set up, and each channel has its own API, if you want to think of it that way, its own webhook. Mm-hmm. So you can set up channels very quickly on the fly if you're working on a project, and you can set up a channel, and in FME you can just use the HTTP caller to send messages, and you can style them up very nicely. I think it uses JSON for styling, and it's a very nice it's just a very nice system. The applications are nice. It's easy to customize. I believe Microsoft Teams has something similar.
Yeah, that's we're a Teams organization ourselves, and we've got a channel set up that we send Teams messages via FME in the similar mechanism using a webhook. So for anybody out there using Teams who wants to do the equivalent, Slack and Teams are effectively competitors to one another. So,
I think it's similar to the reason we use the static web page in Amazon's S3 is that we just started using it before FME had server apps.
Right.
So one day we may move towards Teams and server apps. It's just we were I don't know, too keen.
Yeah, no, I mean Slack was there first, so that's interesting to see. Anyway, you're getting a lot of local authority comments giving you propers for a good non-spatial example. So there you go. Throw that in at the end. But lovely, thank you, David. Really appreciate your time.
No, thank you very much, David. Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks a lot. Cheers. Bye bye.
Cheers.